and welcome to the Bookyard. I'm Sam.
And I'm Kai.
How's your week going?
You know, my week is going pretty good, except that I caught the illness that everybody has.
Not the illness.
I know. Well, and I didn't even get the cold part, because the sickness that we have right now that's going around is like the cold, and then you have the residual cough for forever.
Yeah, I'm in that still.
And I just got the residual cough, so that was cute.
Okay, so you didn't get the crying on the bathroom floor kind of moments.
Unfortunately not. I was really excited.
I knew you would be. It's fine.
But how was your week?
It's good. We're getting ready to go to Peru right now, so that's so fun.
Yay.
Super stressed, and that's okay.
Not okay.
But, you know, M's family is going to have a lot of very cool stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty exciting, I think.
Yeah. This week, we're jumping into All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker.
Yay!
This is just a little different from some of the other books that we've talked about recently. All the Colors of the Dark is a mystery.
I think this is one of the first, if not the only mystery books that I've ever liked.
I know. I was not expecting you to like it, but I loved it, and I'm so glad you loved it.
I did. I really did.
So it has some classic mystery components, but also some inclusions that make it different from other mysteries that we've read. It has a serial killer, love stories, abuse,
yeah,
abortions,
yeah,
a missing persons case, all wrapped into one.
Yeah. So Sam read this book. How did you even find this? I don't remember. You just saw it or what?
I think I just saw it as like a recommended book on one of the platforms, either Storygraph or Goodreads or something like that. And I was like, I need to read this.
So Sam read this book, and she read it around a time where we both were just in the deep end, like struggling. And, you know, Sam is a nature whore.
I love nature.
She loves to just like sit in the mountain and just like feel it.
First day of spring, I'm outside, bare feet,
totally
grounding.
This is one of my favorite things about Sam. But so we decided, well, Sam kind of dragged me up to the mountains, and she was like, let's go. And we had the cutest picnic. I know I said this earlier when we were talking about this, but the sandwiches you made were so good.
They really were. I was impressed with myself.
I think about them often. Anyway, and Sam was like, I just read this book. Can I tell you about it? And I was like, obvi. So she tells me the entire plot of this book, and I was telling her, this sounds amazing, but you're going to have to give me like 5 months to forget everything you told me, and then I'll read it.
That's true. I think you forgot pretty well before you started it.
Yeah, I didn't forget all of it. I maybe should have waited a little bit longer, but I was just so excited to read it.
That's true. It was definitely worth the hype for me.
Yeah, so I thought it was good, but that's how I read this book.
Yeah. Just before we get started with the book, I wanted to give you all some background on the author of the book, because while we were researching it, I found an interview with him on the Niso and Wilbur Smith Foundation's website, where he talks about how he got into writing, and I thought it was insane. We talked about it for like 30 minutes when we found it.
It was crazy.
So I'm going to read his answer now. They asked him, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a writer? Chris said, yes, I had a really strange way into writing. I messed up my A-levels. I did English, economics, and sociology. And then I got really drunk the night before my economics exam and didn't go to it. I only went to one of the two exams, so I got an N, which I think is that it's not even good enough for a mark or a grade. My parents were thrilled about that. I could have retaken it, but I didn't want to go to university. Nothing appealed enough. I wasn't one of those people that knew what they wanted to do. I just thought it would find me. I thought you just fall into something that you like doing, but I just bounced from job to job. I did some bar work, I worked in a supermarket, and then I worked as an estate agent. I was out dropping leaflets through people's doors, and someone mugged me and stabbed me for my phone because I put up a fight. I was only 19 at the time, and I thought the guy wasn't that big. I thought, I can take him, stupidly. And he stabbed me 3 times. I was okay, though. I was just like, let's stitch me back together, and I was okay. Then afterward, I had a really difficult time. I couldn't work out what was wrong with me. I was too young, and I didn't really look into things like depression or post-traumatic stress and things like that. I remember talking to friends, and they'd just slap me on the back and say, get on with it, you're fine. or you did the right thing, you fought him off. It's kind of a teenage thing to do, but then I really struggled afterwards and had trouble sleeping. I quit my job and didn't do an awful lot for a while. Then I wrote down what happened, and that was the first time I'd written anything since school. I changed the people involved to fictional characters, which sounds strange, but it really worked. And then I slept for the first time that night after I'd done it.
That is insane.
Yeah, the man actually got stabbed.
And I feel like in the weirdest way, you really see his trauma and his experience really come through in this book. I don't know if it's just me, but I felt like.
Right. I felt like the violence aspect of like mystery and thriller and all of those series, like, and genres, I feel like he took it more seriously than some of the others I've read. Like a lot of times in like a very cool like thriller, you'll see like, and they were stabbed, and it kind of just glances over it.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like he was able to kind of communicate the kind of trauma that comes from these events.
Absolutely. I think that he did it in a really beautiful way, because I know that a lot of times with these kind of heavier books, people are like, oh, this is just trauma porn, and they just absolutely have a conniption about it.
Yeah.
But I feel like he did it so beautifully that I don't think anybody could say that, you know?
No, I don't think so either. I think it really was such an interesting way to writing, and I would absolutely love to read more of his books.
I would agree, actually. But kind of going on, let's talk about a little blurb from this book. So this blurb is from Goodreads, and I'm giving a fair warning. I don't really know that this is the best explanation for the book, but we're going to roll with it, and we're still going to talk about it. So it says, 1975 is a time of change in America. The Vietnam War is ending. Muhammad Ali is fighting Joe Frazier. And in the small town of Montclair, Missouri, girls are disappearing. When the daughter of a wealthy family is targeted, the most unlikely hero emerges, Patch, a local boy with one eye who saves the girl, and in doing so, leaves heartache in his wake. Patch and those who love him soon discover the line between triumph and tragedy has never been finer, and that their searching for answers will lead them to truths that could mean losing one another. A missing persons mystery, a serial killer thriller, a love story, and a unique twist on each. Chris Whitaker has written a novel about what lurks in the shadows of obsession and the blinding light of hope.
Yeah, this isn't my favorite blurb. I don't think it captured like the full effect of what I would want it to, even the feeling.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times when we read these blurbs, we get like a feeling in your stomach. We're like, ooh, that hit it.
Mm-hmm. But it really, I think it's because the book was so well written, it couldn't possibly capture the like depth of the characters, because the characters I think are really what make this shine.
Totally.
And the blurb really mentions Patch and like wealthy family's daughter.
Right.
Which, you know, aren't even like the only characters that make this book worthwhile.
Right. So it's not my favorite thing.
You have the book with you. Is that what the blurb says from the actual book?
Let me look. So we're looking here, and that's the same blurb that the book gives, which kind of makes me sad.
I know. I wish that it was one of those books that you read the blurb and were immediately excited to read it.
Totally. So
but it's got to be one of those books now that's just a recommendation based, and we will get to that, but we absolutely recommend it.
Yeah. So let's kind of make up our own blurb here.
Okay.
So Patch and Saint are the bestest friends, and Patch is a boy from a broken home, and he, like it says, has one eye, and he's walking through the forest one day.
He wears an eye patch.
Oh, he does. It's kind of cool. He's super into pirates too.
Yes.
How old is he, by the way? 13, 14?
I don't know. They are fairly young. They are teenagers, I think, though. Let me look.
Okay, we just checked. He is 13, and he's just walking through the woods one day, and he hears a girl scream. So he runs, and it's the cool, rich, popular girl, Misty, and somebody's attacking her. So he becomes like this courage hero and takes on the guy.
Yeah, he was carrying a knife with him because he's obviously a pirate in his mind, and he carries this knife with him everywhere, and he fights off this guy, except the man takes him instead of Misty. So Misty ends up running away and everything, and the police are called, but Patch is taken by this man. This is in the background of like 1975, so there are a lot of people like who are going missing in this town and near this town. So they're already looking into like kidnappings, but he's only taken young girls up until this point.
Yeah, totally.
So Saint, who like Kai said is Patch's best friend, she goes on this basically like mission to find Patch. So she starts investigating and is like annoying all of the police officers and everything. And we'll give you a little more context when we go over the characters here in a minute. So as far as the blurb goes, this is a journey to not only find Patch, but spoilers, once Patch is back, understand what he's been through, and then also help him on a lifelong journey to understand what happened to him and also find another girl who was held captive with him. And he becomes really obsessed with finding her because she saved his life.
Absolutely, like really obsessed. And that's where in the original blurb it talks about the obsession and the blinding light of hope, because it's just he comes all like engrossed in finding her.
And he does lose people around him. I mean, him and Saint are on this trajectory right before he's taken where, you know, you can see that their future will develop together. They have chosen to be each other's biggest support system and friends. And Saint is very clearly infatuated with him. And once he is taken and becomes obsessed with this girl that he was held captive with, his whole life trajectory stops. And changes paces. It changes directions. He gets thrown into relationships that he didn't know that he would be thrown into, and his whole life takes on a new meaning. Yeah. So it is a mystery in like 3 different levels.
Yeah, and I'll say it once and I'll say it a million more times. Saint deserved better.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So we're going to set the scene with a little bit of background on all the Colors of the Dark with their characters. So we've talked a little bit about Patch. His name is actually Joseph, but people call him Patch because of his eye patch. His name is Joseph Macaulay. He's our MMC. We have Saint Brown. She's a literal angel on earth.
Absolutely.
Norma is Saint's granny. She's a bus driver extraordinaire. And people in the town think that she's a lesbian, and they kind of make fun of Saint for it, but her grandma isn't a lesbian.
And her grandma is also pretty amazing.
Yeah, she is a great character. Although she does give her some bad advice sometimes, and that's okay.
And then we also have Misty Meyer. She's the one we were talking about earlier. Hot, popular, rich girl. The it girl, if you would. And then we have Callie, who is a victim of the killer, but not really, question mark? We'll get into that. And then Nix is the chief of police. Then we have Toombs, who is like the town doctor. And we also have Jimmy, I don't know his name, Barffest.
Yeah, we hate him. He's a human garbage bag.
I hate him so much. I could just drop kick him right here, right now.
Me too. I hate that man.
He's evil.
We hate Jimmy. Anyway, then we have Sammy, who by virtue of his name is wonderful because all Sams in books are amazing.
Oh yeah, no bias there.
And in real life, because I'm fun. Then we have Grace. Grace is the girl that is held captive with Patch, and we'll talk a little bit about her later. And then we have Charlotte. We will explain a little bit more about her later. We'll double explain here. But she is Patch's daughter.
Ow, ow.
So comes a little later, but she's a little precious character, so we love her.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Patch. I know you had a few questions about his personality and like the way he was raised and all the other things. So let's go for it.
Yeah. I kind of want to talk about, and I mean, we've talked about this before, but I really got stuck on Patch's obsession with Grace, and if it was due to his PTSD or if it was just like who he inherently was and like how much of him being kidnapped had to do with his obsessive behavior, or if it was like how he was raised with like his mom being really like not there. I just kept thinking a lot about that.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I think First of all, just to make sure that we're really clear here, Grace, being the girl that he met while he was in captivity, while he was kidnapped and everything, she basically saved him. She kind of knew the ways of the like kidnapper and serial killer at this point, and she kind of like instructed him. She'd been with him for a long time. So she was kind of helping Patch. Like she was always his advocate. She kept telling this like crazy man that like you can't hurt him. He's religious. Like he has a cross around his neck. He reads scriptures. He can recite prayers. Like he's a good boy. Like don't hurt him. So Grace definitely like saved him. But in regard to his personality, I'm really not sure if it's just a mix of what he was, because his mom was a drug addict.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he really didn't have any support system. And I do feel like even before he was kidnapped, he did have the tendency to like latch on to people. And we see that with Saint.
Right.
So Saint had like sent out all these birthday invitations at the beginning to all the like girls she went to school with. And no one really ended up showing up for her because she was kind of obsessed with bees. It was so cute.
It was so cute.
She had like her own little honey stand and had like sent everybody these invitations to come over. And Patch had like found one somewhere, probably like in the trash or something. And he brought it to her and was like, can I try some of the honey? And they were like friends, right? But they latched onto each other. And I think both of them needed that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if that's indicative of Patch having an addictive personality already.
Right.
Because it does seem like he latches on to things and people with an obsession that like most people don't have.
Right. Well, and to give a little bit more context on where I'm going with this obsessive behavior. So he comes back after being kidnapped. Grace helps him escape, and he's just a different person. He only wants to find Grace, and Saint is like, I will help you, but I missed you. And he's just very like reserved from her, and he really isn't the same person anymore. And he's really obsessed with finding Grace. And he reflects on all these stories that Grace used to tell him. And because how long were they together? Like a year, weren't they? I think it was a good chunk of time.
I don't know if it was quite a year, but it was a good chunk of time. Like it was at least a few months.
Yeah, so they spent a lot of time together. And in that time, Grace told him many stories of places she had been or things about her life before this. And with that, he was like, I'm going to find her with all of these clues. And he becomes friends with Sammy. Well, not really friends in the beginning.
Yeah, so his mom's job was to like clean this art studio. And like this whole building, I don't think it was just the art studio, but Sammy is kind of like the owner of it, and he is an artist as well. But Patch starts stealing supplies from him, like papers and pencils, and he's trying to draw the things that Grace talked to him about in her stories. So Sammy finds him and basically offers him a deal. Like, you can keep working here, but you also need to like, you know, obviously not steal from me. So Sammy and him get really close, and he kind of acts as his mentor, and Patch becomes an artist.
A really great one as well.
Yeah, like people love him, but most of his art comes from, like, at the beginning, it comes from Grace's stories or what he remembers, because they were in the dark this whole time. So he hasn't seen this girl, or else I feel like it would have been way easier for him.
Yeah.
But he does like remember certain things and places, and like he paints her hometown. And then he starts on this journey of like trying to understand the other girls who were taken, because maybe that will lead him to her. And he starts painting them as well. So he kind of becomes famous in this realm, and like meets all their families and starts funds for them. But he becomes like a pretty wealthy person. Throughout this whole spot, he is kind of distancing himself from Saint, while at the same time kind of forming other relationships. He ends up forming relationships with Misty as well. Because she dates her.
Yeah, she is obsessed with him because she feels like she owes him everything. He saved her, and she just is absolutely enthralled by him.
Yeah, and I think she feels guilty because before this incident, he was this weird kid who thought he was a pirate, and he was just kind of like not in her realm. And she kind of ignored him even when he would like talk to her, and then he goes out of his way to save her life. So it kind of fundamentally changes Misty as a person because she goes completely outside of what she thought about this person.
Right. So she kind of is like, no, I want to be with you. And so he ends up dating her and staying with her. And we can talk a little bit more about Misty later, but that is another development that he creates. Or not development, another relationship, rather.
That's true. For right now, I feel like we can talk a little bit more about Saint because that is the main relationship that he goes about like distancing himself from.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to talk about Saint. She's genuinely my hero.
Yeah.
I would walk over a bed of coals for Saint. And
I
if
love
there's
her.
anyone who could replace Zendaya in my list of women that I would marry, it would be Saint.
She's amazing. She really is.
So Saint becomes hyperfixated on finding Patch, right? And in the meanwhile, while she's finding him, she solves like this other mystery, right? She ends up getting this really weird feeling around the town doctor, Toombs.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up finding one of the dead girls who's gone missing on his property.
Yeah.
So they arrest him and he goes to prison. And then she does more research and tracks Patch down alone. Like she finds him alone. And the only reason that the police find her and then also Patch is because she tells Jimmy, this other kid from school, that she's going to this place to go find this man.
Yeah.
Right. So the police find them and everything, but she's the one who finds Patch and rescues him, basically. But she gives her whole life for Patch, and not even only during his captivity. She continually gives her life for Patch. She excels. So she becomes a police officer and then a detective and then just continually goes up in the ranks because she's just a good investigator.
Mm-hmm.
But she gives her whole life for him. She ends up shooting him at one point in the leg so that he can't get away.
He does go to prison.
Twice.
Really cool. I think they were both for stealing money, weren't they? I'm trying to remember.
Once he goes to prison because he accidentally kills Jimmy.
That's true.
So spoiler there. Jimmy sucked though, so
he was terribly abusive.
Yeah. So Saint and Jimmy end up like getting married and then divorced. But Patch like pushes him and he hits his head and like dies. So the second time he goes back to prison, it's because he like straight up killed somebody.
But he deserved it.
He deserved it.
Not Patch, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Let me clarify.
I mean, I guess prison is like an appropriate sentence, but it's fine. It was an accident. Saint like leaves her terrible husband, and honestly there were so many conversations where her grandma would say like, Saint, he's not Patch, but he's never going to be. No one is ever going to be him, so you need to move on. You know, and Saint does that with incredible grace, I think, and she never asks him for more than he's willing to give her. She also has like an abortion mid-book, Saint does, and this is the whole like inciting event for some of the like more heavy abusive themes that come from Jimmy, because she knows that he's not a good man and he can't maintain a job and all of these other things. And she is an investigator at this point, and they have this awful marriage, and she finds out that she's pregnant and she's just not willing to go through with it.
Yeah.
And then when Jimmy finds out is when he beats her up.
Yeah, and so she exercises her right as a woman and gets an abortion because she's like, "Oh, I really can't do this now." Like,
Absolutely. He finds out. He finds out that she had an abortion, and then he beats her up.
That's right. I couldn't remember if she like told him she was planning on it or she already did.
She had already had it done while she was out of state working on another investigation, and it had obviously been eating her alive because Saint really hyper focuses on like spirituality a lot in the book. She definitely is like a religious person, and she's worried about her decisions and the effects that they'll have on other people. And she knows that she's not in a good situation, and she knows that she's going to be the only person supporting this child.
Yeah.
And so she does. She goes and has an abortion, and then when her husband finds out about it, he beats her up. So really not great, but they end up getting in a divorce and everything. And honestly, Saint's life is a lot of it's dedicated to Patch, and then it's also dedicated to herself in that she really wanted to be an investigator, and so many people tell her that she can't.
Yeah.
People are constantly telling her that because she's a woman, she shouldn't be doing it. It's too dangerous. She's not following the correct path for her, and she really like determines her own destiny here, and she sticks to what she feels is the correct way. She's incredibly spiritual, incredibly like grounded.
Yeah, and I would say she's very like justice driven.
She is. She's definitely driven by justice. And honestly, Patch doesn't even hold it against her when she shoots him, because he knows that she has his best interest in mind.
Yeah. So she's overall just a great character. And if this book sounds like it was all over the place, it kind of was, but it all worked together.
It's amazing.
Sorry, we're just kind of jumping, and then it's like, you get shot, and then an abortion, and then they get married, and then the paintings, and it's just, but it all worked. So I would, even though it sounds a little confusing, I really would recommend this book.
Me too.
But kind of talking a little bit more about Misty, we talked a little bit about her guiltiness in her relationship with Patch. And I know that we really differ on our ending feelings on Misty here.
We do. Yeah, for sure. I think Misty for me was really hard to deal with sometimes, because at the beginning, obviously she does have this like realization that she was treating him in a way that was very unjust. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I necessarily loved her at the beginning of the book, because I felt like there was a certain amount of entitlement to Patch.
Yeah.
That specifically Saint was in love with him when she comes back, and Misty keeps inviting him to things, and she kind of realizes that Saint feels the way that she does. And at one point, Saint approaches Misty and asks her very sincerely, like, hey, please don't do this. Like, please don't pursue him. Like, he's everything to me. Like, I spent all of this time trying to find him. Please don't take him from me. Mm-hmm. And Misty absolutely ignores it and goes away. Like, just goes ahead with it. And you know what? That's fine. We need to take into account that Patch also has agency. And he could have said at any point, like, no, I don't want to be with Misty. I want to be with Saint.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
And it really was heartbreaking. And I think that it's hard for me. But at the same time, I have to remember that they were like 17 at this point. Mm-hmm. So I could see 17-year-olds doing this. But I do have some heartbreak for Saint in that aspect.
For sure. And I think we ended up a little bit different on Misty. I know you really loved her towards the end. Mm-hmm. I didn't mind her. I don't think she was my favorite character. Mm-hmm. Even towards the end, I felt like she did have some really good character growth, but I wouldn't say that I would like go to bat for her.
Yeah, so her development, her and Patch kind of have this on and off thing, and in one of their hookups, she ends up getting pregnant. But she decides to not tell him about their daughter for a long time, because obviously he's in and out of prison and just being crazy.
And traveling. I think he was away for like years working on paintings and everything.
Yeah, still trying to find Grace. So like obviously he dedicated his life to finding Grace and didn't have the room, in Misty's opinion. And probably that's the truth, for having a daughter.
Yeah.
So then she eventually opens it up and lets Patch know that he has a daughter. And from there, they kind of become like this kind of family. I don't really know how to explain their dynamic.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where my frustration with Misty comes from, because I could forgive all the other like random things that happen, but it does feel very calculated to me that she invites him back into her life. I mean, he's there and they meet each other, and she doesn't like initially want him to be part of it, but she definitely eventually invites him back into her life, knowing that she has cancer. Like, so she knows she's dying, right? When she kind of like invites him to know his daughter.
Yeah.
And to me, I felt like that was a little hurtful. Like, I know that Patch wasn't a fit father for the majority of this book, right?
Right.
But I do feel that knowing that you're dying maybe shouldn't be the catalyst to pushing your daughter into someone's arms that you thought was unfit for the rest of her life. And honestly, he did have the right to know.
Yeah.
He did. And that's totally fine. I feel like I definitely got towards forgiveness towards her towards the end of the book. Mm-hmm. But I did hold just a little bit of like hurt from that. because I wish she would have either decided while she was okay to have him be part of her life rather than kind of waiting until she knew she was dying to like give Charlotte this chance. I feel like specifically from the perspective of Charlotte, that was kind of a shitty thing to do. I think that if I were a mom, I would have some serious reservations about introducing my daughter to her, you know, felon father just because I know that I'm dying and then hoping that they can make it work. Like, I feel like I would have wanted her to set her up for success with him.
Yeah, I also just don't know what else she was supposed to do, though.
I mean, she definitely could have done it earlier at any point.
For sure.
And
but
she also probably could have guided some of their relationship a little more. She kind of just let it like, Charlotte, this is your dad. Anyway, I'm definitely dying and we could have some picnics together.
I don't think that she told her who he was in the very beginning, though.
She didn't.
Which I don't agree with all of Misty's decisions, but I think that I understood where she was coming from with him feeling like he wasn't a fit father. I don't think that it was right to not tell him, but I think that I get it. And then when she gets sick, she's like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to have an opportunity to like let them meet or get to know one another because I thought I had more time to like talk to her as she got older and kind of figure it out, which is hard because we don't know what her intentions were if she weren't sick. But I just don't know that I'm 100% on that because it's like, but what was she supposed to do?
Yeah, I definitely feel like there are other alternatives, though.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. I mean, we definitely don't have to be on the same page with it. Because I don't hold any, like, resentment towards Misty. Obviously, one, fictional character. Two, like, I just don't really feel, like, any kind of resentment. I just don't feel like I would go to bat for her. I feel like she definitely had some opportunities to make better decisions, and she didn't.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess that we can still be friends. I guess I still like you.
If this episode is the last episode that airs, it's because we're fighting.
I don't think we've ever fought.
Gosh. I don't think we've ever fought either. I don't think Misty's gonna be the like start of fighting for us. Okay. Yeah, so I definitely love Charlotte after they obviously have a really rough start to their relationship.
Yeah.
Charlotte obviously is Patch's daughter, and they kind of become like this mishmash. Oh gosh. You know, like a very cool quilt of a family. And Saint ends up being part of that as well as kind of like a second mother to Charlotte when Patch goes back to prison.
Yeah.
So it definitely is like a very Mod Podge family situation that happens. And it does end up, I feel like, teaching everybody a lot more about compassion and being a good experience for them. It's not easy for any of them at all.
Right.
But I think Charlotte ultimately is a really kind and intelligent woman, thanks to Misty and Patch and Saint.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think all three of them gave the best of what they were to Charlotte.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about Grace and how Patch and her finally meet.
Yes, this was the whole like point of the book, finding Grace. And then he finally does find Grace.
He does. What did you think about the whole ending? He's in prison, obviously, and the warden has one of his like original paintings of like Grace's hometown.
Or like her house or something like very distinct.
It was a hometown because one of the other inmates says to him like, oh my gosh, that's right down the street from my town. That's the main street of this town.
Right.
And Patch gets this revelation. He's like, oh my gosh, I think I know where he is or she is.
Mm-hmm.
And then he ends up orchestrating this escape from prison, which is amazing.
It was so cool and crazy.
It was so intense. And Saint, because she knows him so well, is on top of it. Like, she absolutely knows. She figures out where he's going and ends up running that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they end up finding Grace.
Yeah, and she is like, oh my goodness, Patch? Like, is that you? And they like reunite for 3 seconds, and then she's like, you have to leave.
You need to leave.
Like, he's coming.
Yeah. So they end up finding out that he's her dad, right?
Right.
And I think it was, they didn't say he was her biological dad, but it was like her mom's boyfriend or husband.
Something, yeah.
Something. So the killer ends up being like related to Grace, which we had kind of figured out a little bit earlier. I felt like it was pretty like apparent by that point. But Grace is still very nervous and
Yes.
is worried that he's going to come home and everything. But long story short, basically, he does come home and gets straight up killed.
Dead.
Just super dead.
So after he's dead, though, Grace says to Patch, I can't hang out with you. I can't be with you. Like, you need to just leave. I don't want anything.
Yeah, it's really not like an open door at all. She's like, I'm really grateful, but like, I am ready to live my life, you know?
It was heartbreaking, but I understood because Patch gives his whole life to finding her and being with her, and then he finally gets it, and she's like, no.
One thing I will say about the main characters in this book is that, especially Patch, after years and years and years and decades of looking for this woman, he doesn't feel entitled to her or her time or her life. And honestly, I applaud him. Like, as a main male character, I think it would be very easy to head over into that like shadowy side of like, well, this is what it was all for. But Patch never does that.
No, he takes it really good and is like, okay, I understand. And like they hug and then he leaves.
And it's like after that part of the book, it's like a weight is lifted off of you and off of every character in the book because Grace has been found.
Yeah.
It was such an insane resolution because in the moment you're like, this is not the resolution we hoped for, all of these like hundreds of pages.
Yeah.
But it absolutely is a resolution that gives some kind of interior peace.
Yeah, it was really great. It was just so shocking.
Absolutely. What did you think about the end? Like where, you know, what do you imagine happens with Saint and Patch? Because it kind of left off as like, yay, we're a fun little family.
Yeah, so Patch ends up just like still escaping away and nobody knows where he goes. And I don't remember how they even found out, but Charlotte and Saint find out that he's like out sailing. So they like go to the beach and wait for him, and then they all like reunite, and it just kind of leaves it open. In my ideal world, this is so hard. I think I would say that I probably want Saint to end up with Patch, but I want Patch to do like 5 years of graveling for it. Groveling. Thank you. I was like, that wasn't right.
Just needs to be on the gravel.
Needs to be on the gravel,
kneeling.
crawling.
I just really wish people would gravel for me more.
I want the gravel. So I want him to have to fight for it and really prove himself. I think that they don't deserve each other necessarily. I don't think that's the right word, but I think that they just have so much history and they understand one another, because after all of that, how do you find someone who gets it?
Right.
All of that trauma, all of that experience, and I think that they fit one another in that way, that they never have to explain why they are the way they are.
Yeah.
I don't know. What about you?
I don't know. I oscillate between two separate like futures. I think that in both, part of my dream, I think, is obviously on one hand, I would love for them to like get together and feel that kind of stuff. But I don't know that after everything they've been through that romantic love is in their cards.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because I don't think that they're like capable of it, but because they've been through so many exhausting things that it may just be platonic.
Right.
No matter what, though, in my dream, Saint is able to feel happy. Like all I want for her, honestly, she could sail off into the sunset and she could live with Patch and Charlotte and then eventually find a different person to be with. That's totally fine with me. I think that Saint, more than anyone in this book, deserves so much happiness.
Yeah, I do agree with that. So I just hope that they end up happy no matter what they did.
All of them.
Everybody.
Anyway, overall thoughts on the book. I absolutely loved it.
Absolutely. I ate it right up. It was so good. My only complaint is the cover isn't super pretty, but
yeah. I would say I think I rated it as a 5 out of 5.
I did as well.
It was beautiful, amazing. I would recommend it to anyone. And
absolutely.
Such a fun, like, cross-genre read.
Yeah. I thought it was great. And that's coming from somebody who doesn't really love mystery. All right. Well, next week we're going to be talking about some local indie bookstore recommendations.
Yeah. If you're local to Utah or Utah County specifically, Please check out next episode because we're going to talk about 4 different bookstores that we really like going to. And obviously we haven't made it to all the bookstores in Utah County, but these are some really great options for you, and it'll be a blast.
All right, well, if you like today's episode, we post every Monday, and if you're looking to get your fix throughout the week, you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok. If TikTok is still around, I don't really know what that'll look like.
Yeah, what does the future look like, you know?
I have no idea, but we still are on Instagram and YouTube Shorts as well, and you can find us at thebookyard_pod.
Have a good week.